The Southern Baptist Convention is again in disarray with drama happening within the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. Also, our country is in disarray. The head of the Secret Service has resigned. Thankfully, Biden has dropped out. Kamala Harris is the presumptive nominee. We are going to talk about all of this today on this episode of Relatable. We're going to bring my dad in at the end to get his analysis on all of this. And this episode is brought to you by our friends at Good Ranchers. Go to goodranchers.com. Use code Allie at checkout. That's goodranchers.com, code Allie. Hey guys, welcome to Relatable. Happy Tuesday. Hope everyone had a wonderful weekend, has had a wonderful week so far. Oh my goodness. As you know, we have so much to cover. Our family was out of town over the weekend. We got to enjoy the beauty of Deer Valley, Utah. I've been in Deer Valley before. It's been since probably high school, but gosh, it was such a beautiful trip. I got to fly fish for the first time. A lot of you saw that on Instagram, and it was a great respite from the chaos and the craziness of this election cycle and of the 24-minute news cycle that we are living in. It just was a beautiful and tangible reminder that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He has given us such a gracious gift, a gift of common grace, because everyone gets to enjoy it through his creation. And now I'm kind of hooked on fly fishing, y'all. Like, I want to watch videos. I want to read a book on it. I want to learn how to do it. I did not catch anything for like the first 2 hours of the fly fishing experience, but then the last 5 minutes, I caught that beautiful trout, and it had red dots on it, which my guide told me meant that it was younger than 6 years old, but it was still a large trout. So it was beautiful and it was unique and it was really fun. It was a very physical experience trying to get that trout. We were like in this very fast moving water. And so the guide was literally jumping all over the place trying to get that thing. And that was exciting. Like, I'm still riding that high of catching the trout from fly fishing. And I am going to try to fly fish again very soon. And this will help me. My husband and I were talking about, we always get asked like, what are our hobbies? And we're like, I don't know. We have 3 kids. But now I'll be a fly fisher and I'll be able to say, oh yeah, my hobby, it's fly fishing. And so I'll seem a lot cooler than I actually am. So anyway, that was a nice little respite, a nice little break. And now we got to get back into it because the news is breaking moment by moment. Of course, we are going to bring my dad in last half of the episode to get his take on everything, but I want to give you a summary of everything that's happened before we get to our perspective, our opinion, our explanation of it all. First, let me just start very quickly. We won't get into all of it because I don't have time, but I will just note that Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle has resigned after a crazy congressional hearing. The House Oversight Committee held a hearing with Cheatle yesterday regarding the attempted assassination, and we had Congress people from both sides absolutely tearing into her for her apparent incompetence. And I was interested to see Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez go in on Cheatle in this hearing. Here is SOT 7.
This is about the safety of some of the most highly targeted and valued targets internationally and domestically in the United States of America. So the idea that a report will be finalized in 60 days, let alone prior to any actionable decisions that would be made, is simply not acceptable. It has been 10 days since an assassination attempt on a former president of the United States, regardless of party. There need to be answers.
Good for her. Good for her. I think both Republicans and Democrats did a pretty good job of asking her the right questions, of the Secret Service, and it was right for her to resign. Now, a lot of people have asked, and I'll talk about this with my dad too, why wasn't she fired? Well, she would have had to be fired by Joe Biden, and my dad's got a take on why he did not fire her. But President Joe Biden did release a statement about Director Kim Cheatle after she stepped down. And he said this: Jill and I are grateful to Director Kim Cheatle for her decades of public service. She has selflessly dedicated and risked her life to protect our nation throughout her career in the United States Secret Service. We especially thank her for answering the call to lead the Secret Service during our administration, and we are grateful for her service to our family. So he says that it took honor and courage and integrity And then also said the independent review to get to the bottom of what happened on July 13th, just what happened. So vague, in my opinion, very disrespectful. Continues, and I look forward to assessing its conclusions. I mean, because of her incompetence, and I think that is the most charitable reading of the situation, because of her incompetence, a man died. A man died. Yes, a former president was shot at and he was injured. That is a tragedy in and of itself, not just for President Trump personally, but also just for the state of our country. But 2 innocent people were critically injured. Thankfully, I think they're making a full recovery. But one man, a father, a husband, a firefighter, was murdered because he was exercising his constitutional right to express his political opinions in the way of attending a rally. I mean, that is an utter tragedy. That's not just what happened on July 13th. Because of her incompetence or something worse, an innocent man has died. And so for President Biden to praise her at this juncture, at this moment, is really stunning. Now, of course, at this case, he doesn't give a flying rip what people think about him. I mean, he's not trying to run again, of course. So he can say and do whatever he wants. But I just thought, from a human perspective, the person that we hear is the empath in chief, is the leader that exemplifies the most kindness, decency, and compassion that a person can muster, that he released a statement like this, praising the director of the Secret Service under whose watch an innocent man was murdered. I think that is awful. Trump responded on Truth Social. He said, the Biden-Harris administration did not properly protect me, and I was forced to take a bullet for democracy. It was my great honor to do so. Okay, that's true. That's fair. But again, I think the greater tragedy is that an innocent man was murdered. I would say that even if you're just being strategic campaign-wise, that would be the thing to highlight right now. Remember President Trump. People like your shift in demeanor. They like your shift in countenance. They like your calmness. They liked a lot of your humility that you displayed in that RNC speech. They like that. Be that person. Be that person. Whatever you have to do, come across as selfless and compassionate and human-centered as you possibly can. I do think that Trump has a big heart. I really do. We need to see that on display as much as possible. It was so beautiful at the RNC, seeing his children, his grandchildren, just honor him and praise him. It was beautiful to see him do the right thing to honor the victim that was killed at the rally. I think it's, I know it's Corey, but the pronunciation of the last name, I think it's Comparator. And it was beautiful to see him, honor him. We need to see more of that, really just for the sincere reason of having true compassion and goodness and love on display. But even if you're just thinking campaign wise, which is necessary for politics, like we got to see that. We got to see that selflessness and that humility really on display. Now, speaking of selflessness and humility, there are some people in the Christian camp and the evangelical camp saying that Biden stepping down was an act of humility. It was an act of valor even. And we'll get into that in just a minute. Let me pause and tell you about our first sponsor for the day. That is Adele Natural Cosmetics. So Adele Natural Cosmetics, it's an amazing company. I've been working with them for years. I've been using their products for years. I love their skincare. It is really the first holistic skincare line that I've ever used, and it's made a huge difference for my skin. I love their oil-based cleanser. I don't use harsh soaps or any kind of like sudsing cleansers on my face because I realize it's just not necessary. I need more moisture. I really need my makeup to be fully removed, and I rely on the essential oil-based cleanser from Adele Natural Cosmetics for that. I love all of their serums, all of their balms, all of their lotions. They smell amazing, and they are 100% natural. You never have to worry about anything fake in their stuff. That includes in their makeup too. Everything is handcrafted, made in the USA. This is run by a family who loves the Lord. They are completely unapologetic about that, as well as their pro-life values. So it's just a win all around. Get your makeup, get your skincare from Adele Natural Cosmetics. Go to AdeleNaturalCosmetics.com. Use code Allie for 25% off your first time purchase. AdeleNaturalCosmetics.com, code Allie. So before we get into the part of the evangelical response to this, specifically the head of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission that is part of the Southern Baptist Convention, I need to actually tell you what happened with Biden dropping out. Now, a lot of you already know the details about that, but some of you don't, and more power to you. If you're not someone who spends time on X and you just rely on Relatable to tell you what's going on in the news, I think that's great. I would never tell you to plug in any more than that. We've got to protect our peace as much as possible. Even me, I cannot be chronically online. And there are definitely some people, especially, some influencers out there, and that is their job, to be reading and sharing every headline. And again, more power to them too. I cannot do that. And so I am going to give you as much information and analysis as I possibly can, while also not trying to be chronically online. But for those of you who are really not online, you really don't know what has gone on with Biden dropping out, let me give you a little bit of a summary. So he announced in a letter posted on X Sunday afternoon that he is ending his presidential campaign for the 2024 election to focus on fulfilling his duties for the remainder of his term. So it was a long letter. I won't read the whole thing, but I'll read you a little bit of it. So he lists some of his accomplishments. For example, he says America has the strongest economy in the world. And some people have asked a very fair question: is the strongest economy in the world in the room with us right now? He says we've made historic investments in rebuilding our nation and lowering prescription drug costs for seniors and expanding affordable health care to a record number of Americans. He also says we appointed the first African-American woman to the Supreme Court. He says America has never been better positioned to lead than we are today, which is just objectively untrue. He says it has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president. And while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down. Interesting language there, stand down, and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of the term. He says, I will speak to the nation later this week in more detail about my decision. Now, my dad and I have some theories on what this is really about, what led to this. There is some very reliable reporting about how Biden was pressured to make this decision. Now, there are also, I think understandably so, a lot of theories about this letter. The validity of this letter. Like, is this really Joe Biden? There are tweets comparing his signatures, and it looks like the little underlining of his signature that you just saw if you're watching on YouTube in this letter is different than Joe Biden has ever signed it. People are wondering why it looks so unofficial. Why is there no letterhead? Why is there no presidential seal? It's probably because it was a campaign announcement and it wasn't an official announcement as, within the office of the presidency. There's probably some of that there. There's also reporting that really very few people heard about this, as you'll hear me say with my dad. And so he did this almost kind of unofficially and kind of off to the side with Jill and with a couple of his top aides, because it also was reported that some White House aides did not hear about this until they saw it posted on X, which is pretty remarkable. And so I'll get into with my dad kind of what we think according to the reporting and what we know, what was happening behind the scenes that led him to make this announcement and make the announcement the way that he did. Now, some people are just assuming that this was not him at all, that he did not write the letter, and that he is secretly resisting, and that this is a coup, and that he is not even going along with the coup right now, that he had nothing to do with drafting this letter. That's not my take. I don't think that that's true. Now, you could still say it's a form of a coup and that there is some bribery and blackmailing involved possibly here without believing that Joe Biden is secretly resisting to this moment behind the scenes. I think he probably did resist. I know that he did resist for a while there, but I don't think that he is unaware of what's happening. And some people are speculating that he's not even with us. There was actually, there are rumors that are abounding right now about the state of his health and the state of even just his existence. There are many people saying that he is in hospice and that he has died. I do not think that that is the case. However, those kind of theories are the result of us not being able to trust what we read. It is very weird. It is very weird to announce something like this on X and then not release a video immediately or any sign of life or vitality whatsoever. For him to wait until what's supposed to be tomorrow to make his remarks on video to the American people from the White House, that is going to cause a lot of distrust, a lot of panic, and in that kind of environment, there's going to be a lot of purposeful disinformation. There is going to be less purposeful misinformation. There's going to be a lot of confusion, a lot of hypotheses, and a lot of just straight up conspiracy theories too. That's just what happens when we can't trust the media, when we can't trust our government. But we have also heard that his health from COVID, if you believe that he was truly diagnosed with COVID, that he is recovering, that his health is recovering. And this is from Dr. Kevin O'Connor. He is a physician to the president. He said President Biden completed his 10th dose of Paxlovid this morning. 10 doses seems like a lot. I don't know. His symptoms have almost resolved completely. He goes into detail on that. The president continues to perform all of his presidential duties. I will continue to keep your office updated with any changes in his condition or treatment plan. Again, I just don't know. I'm not sure I buy all of this. The timing is just too strange, as I will talk about with my dad. Very quickly after he announced that he was dropping out of the race, he endorsed Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris is obviously his vice president, and she is a radical in every sense of the word. She is a radical on immigration. She is a radical on law enforcement. She is a radical, most disturbingly, on abortion. And in the coming days and weeks, we are going to detail all of her positions and her record on these things. It's not that surprising that he endorsed Vice President Harris, and the Clintons endorsed her. Lots of politicians have endorsed her now. She has access to all of his campaign coffers. She's the only one who would, because she is on the ballot. She was on the ballot already. And she also has raised millions and millions of dollars in the first 48 hours of announcing her candidacy for the nomination. So she is the presumptive nominee. She is going to have the full support of the Democrat Party. Does she actually have the ability to beat Donald Trump? Right now, general election polling says no, but I would say that it is absolutely possible for her to beat Donald Trump, and that just means we have to take it really seriously. And we will get into more about Kamala Harris with my dad, but I want to talk about this SBC story quickly before we get into that conversation. But let me pause and tell you about our second sponsor for the day, and that is Preborn. Preborn is an amazing network of clinics. They work every day to save the lives of unborn children. They provide free resources to pregnant moms in need and to families in crisis. And one of the first things that they do is provide a free sonogram for that mom. When the baby is seen on the ultrasound screen, when the heartbeat is heard, that mom is so much more likely to choose life for her child. And they are showing the love of Christ to these women. They are saving lives in more ways than one. The cost of an ultrasound is $28. So if you can donate to Preborn, just $28, you can help save a life. But whatever you can give, whatever is your best and most generous gift, donate to Preborn. You are doing generational work to save the lives of children and to help their moms and dads. Go to preborn.com/Allie to make that donation. That's preborn.com/Allie. All right, so there is drama in the Southern Baptist Convention. This is the biggest denomination in the United States. I've been a part of the SBC my whole life. I was dedicated as a baby in First Baptist Dallas. I don't know if you saw the terrible news over the weekend that their historic building burned down almost to the ground. But actually, just to note this, is just miraculous. The 130-year-old podium that has been used by, for example, W.A. Criswell and others, it somehow survived this fire. That's just incredible. And now maybe that is some kind of metaphor for the SBC, because it seems like the Southern Baptist Convention is always up in flames somehow. But God's word and those who preach God's word faithfully are going to stand, are going to survive the fire, metaphorically. So on Monday evening, the Executive Committee of the Board of Trustees for the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the SBC announced that it had removed ERLC President Brent Leatherwood from his position. The ERLC, if you don't know, is the public policy and research organization of the SBC. It's supposed to be advocating for positions relating to life, religious liberty, and marriage in Washington, D.C. However, there have been a lot of conservative criticisms of the ERLC over the years, especially when it was under the leadership of Russell Moore. Its stance on things like immigration have been, in many cases, left of center. Russell Moore is, I believe, from what I can see, a tried and true Democrat, and he truly wants to honor, I think, Democratic politicians. And while he is punching right, of course, he had a lot of issues with Donald Trump, not even just from a policy perspective, and it seemed like he always gave the utmost deference to President Biden and to other Democrats. So just very lopsided there. In an op-ed for the Baptist Press, Leatherwood said, "Not only is this a historic decision, it is the right decision for our nation. For Biden to step down, we should all express our appreciation that President Biden has put the needs of the nation above his personal ambition. Despite what some partisans will say, to walk away from power is a selfless act, the kind that has become all too rare in our culture." So a lot of people did not like this, praising President Biden. And I happen to agree this is a silly statement. It's just untrue. He was not being courageous. He was not being righteous. He was not being selfless in any way. He was basically, I think, pressured out of the campaign, that he was told that he basically had to step aside because he could not beat Donald Trump. I certainly don't think that this was something done just freely by his own volition and that he was doing something kind and compassionate for the nation. Not at all. Eric Metaxas says, "What lunacy can you imagine thinking it was somehow selfless? He was forced out almost at the point of a gun." God help the ERLC and the American Church. Megan Basham, who has reported on this, wrote a book about the ERLC and a lot of what she sees as what she reported as corruption within the ERLC. She says, "This is one of the most dishonest and cynical political statements I've ever seen. No one believes that Joe Biden dropped out due to selflessness. It's almost obscene to utter something so discrediting in a moment like this." Samuel Say says, "The ERLC is repeating Democrat talking points. Again, that is very telling. Joel Berry, he was forced out. You goobs." So amidst this criticism, yesterday evening, the ERLC announced on their website that they had removed Leatherwood as president. So this was their official statement. The Executive Committee of the Board of Trustees for the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention has issued the following statement. "In accordance with our bylaws, the Executive Committee has removed Brent Leatherwood as president. Further details, as well as plans for the transition, will be provided at our September board meeting. Until then, the Executive Committee of the Board of Trustees will assume directional responsibility for carrying out the ministry assignments for the ERLC." So The executive committee action reportedly happened without any notification of the full board to the full board. Other board members reportedly found out about the firing when the news was published on Baptist Press. Following the ERLC announcement, Clint Presley, he is the president of the SBC, he posted to X asking the SBC members to pray for Leatherwood and his family during this time. He said, as Southern Baptists, we should all care about our entities and their well-being. Russell Moore, previous president of the ERLC, as I already said, that I think took it in the progressive direction that it's gone. He says, in reaction to this news, shameful and disgraceful. A great Christian man who lived through his children barely surviving a school shooting. He is talking about the tragic Covenant shooting that happened last year in Nashville. Southern Baptists, how much more of this are you going to let go on? You cannot pretend not to see what is happening in your name. And then he replied, sometimes the Venn diagram of evil and stupid is a perfect circle. So the fact is, we don't know what bylaws the ERLC was talking about when they said that in accordance with their bylaws, he had to be removed. We actually don't know if it was just in response to the criticism that Brent Leatherwood received when he said what he did about Biden stepping down, or if it was something bigger than that. We're not really sure. But this Russell Moore reaction does make it seem like it was probably that the ERLC, or part of the ERLC, did kind of succumb to the pressure of critics of Brent Leatherwood's statements, and that's why he was ousted. Now, a lot of conservatives praised this decision by the ERLC, saying that this was a good move, that Brent Leatherwood, they say, have been, he's been taking it into this even more leftward direction. He shouldn't have said anything positive about President Biden stepping down. Megan Basham responded to what Russell Moore's reaction was by saying this: for years, both you and your successor, Brent Leatherwood, used the ERLC to pursue your personal political objectives. Rather than represent the views of the majority of Southern Baptists, you pushed issues that the rank and file did not support, like gun control, amnesty policies. In fact, you went even further and used the position to wage war on your personal enemies. Though you both treated the ERLC as if it belonged to you to do your will, the fact is it belongs to Southern Baptists, whose tithes paid your salaries. So she reports on a church happening, specifically Southern Baptist Convention happenings. She wrote a book on the drift of the ERLC and other entities. So she knows a lot about this. Tuesday morning, so this morning, the ERLC retracted the announcement that they had removed Brent Leatherwood. They also deleted the previous press release about his removal. They said this: as members of the ERLC's executive committee, we formally retract the press release, which was sent yesterday. There was not an authorized meeting, vote, or action taken by the executive committee. Kevin Smith has now resigned as the chair of the executive committee. Oh my goodness. Brent Leatherwood remains the president of the ERLC and has our support moving forward. Brent Leatherwood responded to all of this. He said on X, I deeply appreciate anyone or everyone who has reached out, especially our trustees who were absolutely bewildered at what took place yesterday and jumped in to set the record straight. Conservatives, they have their issues with this reversal in decision. Megan Basham, journalist for the Daily Wire, said, so the New York Times editorial board and CNN, at the behest of Russell Moore, went into overdrive to object to Leatherwood's removal. So did Religion News Service, an outlet funded by a hard-left LGBTQ foundation that has promised to reform Christian doctrine on sexuality, no matter how conservative, to make it affirming of homosexuality. Speaking to sources within ERLC this morning who tell me that yes, the media blowback from CNN, the New York Times, and other secular left media orchestrated, she says, by Russell Moore was indeed what caused ERLC to retract its dismissal of Leatherwood. ERLC, that's his handle on X. Oh my goodness. I mean, the SBC, love it. I've been a part of it, like I said, forever. I believe in Baptist doctrines, but we have more drama than an 8th grade cheerleading squad. Like, can we not for 1 second? Like, can we not? Can we just respond to the chaos of the world by being steady and strong and sure for like half a millisecond? Now, I don't agree with Brent Leatherwood's statement. And like, I agree that the leftward drift of the ERLC and parts of the SBC in general are extremely troubling. I mean, Megan Basham's reporting has been really good on this. I really disagree with Russell Moore and his stance on politics. 100%. I think it has been extremely damaging to the SBC, and actually what has caused so much division. I don't think it's the conservatives causing the division. I think it's the conservatives that are just responding to the divisiveness of some of the left-leaning leaders within the SBC. But I kind of understand why Brent Leatherwood put out the statement that he did, because the ERLC is supposed to seem nonpartisan. They aren't supposed to seem like a Republican institution, and they're not supposed to seem like a Democrat institution. And so that means that sometimes they have to appear that they are throwing a bone to the left, throwing a bone to the Democrats. And some people could argue that they've done more than throwing a bone to Democrats for a long time. But they have to appear like they are not on either side. So when there is an opportunity to compliment the left without affirming their policy decisions, they're going to take it. So I think that's why Brent Leatherwood probably saw this as a safe way to do that, to try to appear fair. Now, he was wrong in his assessment. It was not courageous by Biden. He was not being selfless. I think he could have said, without, ascribing those character qualities to Biden, I think he could have just said this was the right thing to do. This is going to be good for our country. We don't know everything that led up to this decision, but I'm glad that it happened. He could have just left it at that. I think he could have played both sides that way. But valorizing President Biden for a decision that I really don't think he did out of personal selflessness, that was probably the wrong move. But I see how he strategically was trying to play it. Shortly after all of this, or really in the midst of all of this, the ERLC and Brent Leatherwood put out a thread of Kamala Harris's most unbiblical, dangerous, harmful, awful policy positions over the years. And so I'm not denying the leftward drift here, and I'm not denying what was wrong with Brent Leatherwood's comments originally. I see why. I see why he probably went that direction. Now, some people think we shouldn't even have an ERLC, that it's just a lost cause at this point. I won't get into that debate, but that is a position that many people have, that it's just too corrupt at this point. So that's what's going on. That's what's going on with the SBC and the ERLC right now. Man, it's too much. It's too much. I just want things to calm down for half a second. It doesn't seem like it's going to do that. So whatever break you need in your life, whatever respite, whatever rest, however much time you need to shut off the phone, to be in nature, to be in quiet and stillness with our Creator, you need to do that. We need that more than ever. And the times that it feels like we have no time to stop and pray. We have no time to rest. We have no time to think on the things of eternity. We have no time to read our Bible. Those are the moments when we need to do those things the most. I think it was Martin Luther who said, I have so much to do today that I have to dedicate all of this time in the morning to prayer. And that, I hope and pray, is my mentality, that the crazier and the more chaotic and the more demanding the news seems, that the more I realize my need for rest and stillness before God, that He has to be our power source. He has to be our anchor. Because remember, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And the Lord's eternal plan of redemption is what? It's always going off without a hitch. And we can trust that His victory is absolutely sure. We care about politics while not abandoning our responsibility to live out the Christian life in this moment, in the here and now. The mundane moments matter Most. They do. All right. Now my dad is going to give his commentary, not on any of the SBC stuff. I've covered that, but everything that has happened with Biden and Kamala and everything that's about to happen. He'll break it all down and we'll give our takes on all of it. So without further ado, here is my dad. Okay, Dad, welcome back to the show. Let's start out with the latest news. The director of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheatle, she just resigned. Are you surprised by this at all?
I'm surprised she hadn't already resigned. But when you go in front of Congress and say that you basically were in charge of the greatest failure by the Secret Service in decades, probably handwriting was on the wall. So she's going to go back to, as my good friend and Congressman Pat Fallon said, she may go back to guarding Doritos at PepsiCo.
Is that what she was doing before?
Well, she was head of security at PepsiCo, so they own Doritos.
Oh, that explains the memes I've seen of her holding a bag of Doritos and guarding it with a gun. I got it. I had missed that piece of information. That makes a lot more sense now. Okay, a lot of people are asking, she was pushed to resign, but why wasn't she just fired? What's your take on that?
Well, because Joe Biden wants to keep his record of not firing anybody, which he has not fired one staff member or one cabinet member since he's been president. And of course, we know that he's not doing that. He didn't even know it was a lady that was his Secret Service head. He called it, a guy the other day. So I just think that's the way they've handled things. They didn't want anything to really make the news.
Yeah, he released a statement earlier this morning just thanking her for her service, and he didn't even describe what happened. He just said what happened. I mean, a man died because of her incompetence. So I just thought that was a very tone-deaf statement by him. Were you surprised to see both Republicans and Democrats like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez really bring in the heat in that hearing with Kim Cheatle?
I wasn't really surprised to see AOC do it because I think she's just anti-law enforcement, no matter whom it is, no matter which organization it is. But I was a little surprised to see the others be so adamant. I think they felt like they were free to do it since Biden is officially a lame duck president. You'll notice that Democrats will be a lot bolder during the next few months where they can separate Biden from Harris. They'll be a lot bolder against him or criticizing him.
That's a really interesting point. Okay, speaking of a lame duck president, we have President Biden's statement that he released on X over the weekend. We have not seen him yet, but he dropped out of the race. Apparently, he realizes that he is unfit to campaign, but we're supposed to believe that he is still fit to be the commander in chief. So just tell us all of your thoughts on everything that has unfolded over the past few days.
Well, when Mom and I were out of the country, I thought that it might happen while we were gone, and I was only about a week late on that. And I think what happened during that week is that he negotiated some type of deal. He and Jill, she has been conspicuously absent from any place since all of this started. And I think that the Obamas and the Pelosi's and the Schumers just finally went to him and says, look, you can do this. Essentially, you can do this the easy way or the hard way. And I think he battled up until the end. And when he knew it was a fait accompli, that he cut whatever deal he cut. I don't know what it is, but my guess is that he cut some type of deal that will involve something beneficial to his family.
Okay, gotcha. There's a lot of conspiracy theories out there since he hasn't shown his face. Do you think that it's weird that he only posted this letter on X and that he hasn't said anything verbally yet, and it's been several days at this point?
Yeah, and when you go back and look at how Lyndon Johnson handled his when he got out, and he was kind of forced out as well in a way, although he did it much earlier than Biden has done it. That's what you do. Even President Nixon, who definitely was forced out, he read he went on TV and read a statement to the nation, and President Biden evidently is going to speak tomorrow night. But my guess is they're really continue to be worried that he must be continuing to deteriorate in his ability to, totally function properly. And that's sad, no matter who it is. That's a sad scenario, but it's even sadder that people would have pushed him and propped him up. It's such a failure to the American people. I don't care if those are exactly the policies that he wanted to put forth. The fact that he wasn't the man that they promoted him to be is really a shame. And in my opinion, is I wouldn't say it's treasonous at all, but it is definitely fraud. They committed fraud, in my opinion.
Yeah. Do you buy that he really has COVID?
No, I never bought that. I think that they realized that if he was going to get up in front of the crowd at the NAACP meeting out in Las Vegas, that things could go awry. And, I think some days when you get like that, we saw it in Mom, your grandmother, that some days are more confused than others. And that could have been one of those days. Now, I don't know this for sure, but that's my guess.
Yeah. And, I hate to think that things are this cynical and this strategic, but when you have to think of the Democrat Party really as this machine. It's not just an individual. It's not Joe Biden. They're willing to do whatever it takes to win. And really the only thing that could garner similar amounts of sympathy for Joe Biden as the nation has just had for Donald Trump and for one of his supporters at his rally is for him to have pretty serious illness, is for him to be sick. And I hate to think of it like that this apparent diagnosis is strategic, but the timing of it all is just a little bit too on the nose to not be purposeful, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that the other side saw the election slipping away pretty quickly, given his debate performance and some of his comments since then, and then President Trump surviving an assassination attempt, in addition to all of his policy issues that people are concerned about, like the price of groceries, the price of gas, the open border, those types of things. And either they just took all those in consideration and says, hey, we've got to figure a way to make this exit happen quickly. And what's the best way to do it? Well, we can't say that he's mentally incapable. We can say, though, that he has COVID, because people still, seem to get that some. So, and people really don't question that when it happens, right? That's one of the things that, that we're not allowed to question at all.
Yeah. You mentioned that there was some sort of deal, right, that you think kind of led up to Biden stepping out of the race. And the New York Post reported this exclusively. They said the operatives at the very highest levels of the Democratic Party threatened President Biden with forcibly removing him from office unless he stepped down. Sources told the Post the well-orchestrated palace coup, that's what a lot of people are calling it, to stop the faltering president from seeking re-election had been in place for weeks, but stubborn Biden fought it every step of the way, a source close to the Biden family told the Post on Monday. I have heard similar things from liberal sources, from liberal journalists, that Biden and Jill Biden, that they did not want to step down, that he is being very stubborn, that he wanted to keep running, that he really thought that he was going to be able to beat Donald Trump, but that the pressure, even though there were Democrats coming out front publicly and saying, oh no, we support President Biden, that behind the scenes, there was a whole lot of pressure mounting to push Biden out, and that the reason why he announced the way that he did, he just kind of tweeted it, not even with the presidential seal and the letterhead and everything. One, it was a campaign statement, but also because he only told a couple of people. Apparently it was Jill, it was a couple of aides, and he did it how he wanted to do it. He didn't want it to seem like he had orchestrated with the Democrats, who he felt really betrayed by. So That's interesting. That just goes to show, again, Biden, it doesn't matter how long you've been in this game and how much you've done for the Democratic Party, they want to win.
It's a blood sport, as I've said before. And to me, it's kind of ironic, because it really is a little bit like what they did to Bernie Sanders in 2020, right? Yes. They basically pushed, because Bernie was going to win the Democrat nomination. And they essentially got everybody together and said, look, we don't really want Joe, but he's our best opportunity to win. And so they essentially said, Bernie, here's what we'll do. We'll give you a Senate finance chair. And if you don't take that, we're going to just this is probably what they said, we're going to ruin you, right? And so the same thing now turned around and happened to Biden, right? It's just, it's kind of like the Kill Bill movies. Kill Bill 1 and 2, it's just kind of like Kill Bernie, Kill Joe. It's strangely
and
similar.
You're talking about in 2020 Bernie Sanders. I mean, some people really think that Bernie Sanders back in 2016 was also pushed out.
Probably so. Yeah, he didn't get much for that. Maybe something that we don't know about. But in 2020, he definitely got chair of Senate Finance as a quid pro quo.
Because if people remember, 2020 seems like forever ago now, but Joe Biden was not doing well in the primary. He came in fourth, I think, in the Iowa caucus, and he didn't start picking up wins until all of a sudden, as you said, in South Carolina, and then he became the nominee. I think it was really obvious that they thought Bernie Sanders could not beat Donald Trump, that he was still too radical, still too far left, and that they needed kind of a guy who seems, even though he's not politically, but seems kind of middle of the road. So immediately after he dropped that on X, he endorses Kamala Harris. Were you surprised by that at all, or did you see that coming?
I was a little surprised he endorsed her so early, but that also tells me that it was orchestrated as well, so that they could get behind one person. The Democrats were in somewhat of a box because how are they going to not get behind a woman of color and a female, right? I mean, a person of color and a female. And so she's probably not the best candidate for the Democrats. She probably doesn't have the best chance to beat Donald Trump. But they really didn't have much of a choice. And it's really a shame because they basically have told the delegates to the convention that you don't mean anything.
Yeah.
And they're going to elect her, in my opinion, on the first count, because if they don't, the superdelegates get in and then they're going to elect her anyway. And if you're a Democrat and you go against this, your career is over. So it's a shame. They should have just gone to an open convention, allowed the best person to win, but they're not going to do that. And I'm not sure the Republicans would have done anything different than that. But that's what's going to happen. And Kamala is as far left, if not further left, than Bernie Sanders ever was.
Right. Oh, she totally is. She's got a 100% rating from Planned Parenthood, was the most just rabidly pro-abortion Attorney General of California. She carried that into her senatorial position. And then, of course, as vice president, too, that has been her issue, probably why she has ignored what was supposed to be her responsibility, which is the border, just to push more and more abortion. So that's who she is. I do think that she's got to have a chance. Like, I'm not sure, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong here, but I think that they probably did some internal polling. And if all the polling had come back saying there is no chance in the world that Kamala can beat Donald Trump, I don't know that Biden would have endorsed her. I don't know that the Clintons and all of these people would have endorsed her if it looked like she had zero chance.
Well, I think that what happened is it's hard to poll people that haven't been out there in the public eye, that people don't know. And so she probably had, in the Quinnipiac poll that come out today, basically it was unchanged between her and Biden, essentially the same. And as we've talked about, it's the national polls, they're fun to look at. They're not near as important as the swing state polls. And so it's hard to tell exactly I don't know that there's going to be a big bump. The question is, will she take some female vote away from Trump, and will she take some minority vote away from Trump? I'm not sure of that right now. We'll just have to see over the next few months. Now, one of the things I think that the DNC is going to do, though, Allie, even before the convention, is to do a virtual roll call, essentially, so that they can claim, in Ohio, August the 7th is the last date that you can have your name added to the ballot. And there's some controversy over that, but their convention isn't until August 19th. So I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. I assume they'll get it all figured out.
Yeah. So do you think that there is any chance? I mean, she has enough delegates to be the nominee at this point, but do you think that there is any chance that she doesn't become the nominee?
Nope, I really don't. Now, you never know. I mean, she could stumble really, really bad before the convention, and that's what she's got to avoid. But if she doesn't stumble before the convention, or there's some, August surprise that comes up, I don't think there's any chance she's not the nominee. I mean, who on the Democrat side, they're so DEI focused. She was a DEI pick, right?
Yeah.
For vice president.
She was.
And I mean, she polled 2% when she was running for president.
Yeah.
She was basically the least Democrat person in the polls during the primary run popular. In 2019 and 20. So least popular. So this is a DEI pick, and who's going to go against that in the Democrat Party?
All right, let me pause from that conversation and tell you about Jase Medical. In the wake of Hurricane Beryl, over 2 million people were left without power in Texas during the summer. With its intense heat and humidity, Texans are preparing themselves for the severe thunderstorms and power outages that follow hurricanes. And wherever you live, there is always a chance of some kind of weather catastrophe or other kind of catastrophe happening where you need to make sure that you have access to medicine like antibiotics or your daily prescriptions. You don't want to get in that kind of emergency situation and not be able to get the medication that you need that could potentially save your life. If you have an infection, for example, you need some, say, amoxicillin, but for whatever reason, you can't go through your doctor, your insurance, your pharmacy to get it. You just need an emergency stash. That's why Jase Medical exists. You can get your Jase case. It comes with a supply of the most common antibiotics for common infections. You can add things like an EpiPen or ivermectin, which I would recommend doing. You can also get Jase Daily. That's a year-long supply of the prescriptions that you and your family rely on. Go to jasemedical.com. Use code Allie at checkout for a discount. That's jasemedical.com, code Allie. I'm interested to see who she would pick as her running mate. I personally think it's probably going to be the governor of Kansas, Andy Beshear. He's really popular in that state.
You mean Kentucky?
Oh, Kentucky. Sorry, not Kansas. Kentucky. It just seems to me like that would probably be a strategic pick for her, because in the same way that Biden kind of came across as this more moderate guy, of course, he's an old white man. And so they wanted him to appeal to the independents, the working class who were kind of in between. She needs also someone to the right of her. She needs someone a little more center, or who can appeal to the center. And I think that a governor from Kentucky, a white guy from Kentucky who is kind of cast as some moderate, even though he's really not, would probably be helpful for her, at least image-wise. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I definitely think it'll be a male. I think it'll be a white male that will, and probably Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, is the likely pick. The gentleman from Pennsylvania, his name escapes me right now, could have been a good pick, but her position on Israel, Shapiro and his position on Israel are vastly different.
Yeah.
She is, while she claims to be supporting Israel, she doesn't really. She is very pro-Palestinian on that. And we'll see what the Jewish vote is. I mean, the Jewish vote has been, for lack of a better word, misguided for the last 50 years since FDR, or last 70 years since FDR left. But hopefully they'll wake up and see who really supports them. And the Republicans support Israel much more than the Democrats ever have. And now, interesting thing on Andy Beshear, he's a Democrat governor in a heavy red state.
Yeah.
People might wonder, well, how does that happen? Well, here's what happens is the way a Democrat gets elected as a statewide candidate in a red state is they run up the vote tally in the deep blue areas. All right. Like Lexington, Kentucky is a blue area, and some of the other major cities are blue areas. So they'll run the vote up there because it's a statewide vote, right? And that's how he gets elected. Now, he had 20 pieces of legislation that he vetoed. I mean, we're talking about tough on crime legislation, education legislation. He vetoed that the legislature, because it's so Republican, overrode the veto. And so he really has not been very effective governor at all. And that's something I hope people bring up. I look forward to he and J.D. Vance having a conversation. I don't look forward to Trump and Kamala having one. I noticed they announced it. It's supposed to be on September 10th. Again, if President Trump's team is listening, which I know they probably are to your podcast, there is no upside in him debating Kamala Harris. There's no upside whatsoever.
I agree.
He's already debated the policies of the Biden administration. Those are her policies. He doesn't need to have some liberal moderator that's going to be just feeding to her, and she's going to bait him to try to get him to say something that people will say is misogynist or whatever. Okay?
Yeah, right.
They will not treat the two of them the same. And so my recommendation is don't do it. Yeah. President Trump, don't do it.
I know. Do not. I think it's easy for us to make fun of her because she's had so many awful sound bites. To me, she comes across as dumb. She comes across as superficial, as vapid, with a lack of understanding of the issues and just an inability to really articulate her positions or really anything substantive. And so I think it's easy for us to say she would be so easy to demolish in a debate and she's going to be so easy to be. I don't think that we should be overconfident. Now, I think J.D. Vance could have demolished her in a debate because he's skilled at that. He has been doing that kind of thing for a long time. Yeah. But as you know, as we've talked about, and as I said in the debate with Biden, contrasts matter. Trump won that because of the contrast against Joe Biden. He also received a surge of support after the assassination attempt because of the contrast between him and Joe Biden. Well, the contrast between Kamala and Trump doesn't look as good for Trump. We think it should, but to the general public, it doesn't. I think it would hurt him more than help.
Yeah, well, there's no question. First of all, she is a relatively short person, it looks like, and I've never met her personally. He is really tall, which when it's two males, it's okay. But when it's a male and a female, that can work against you. And she is not going to pay any attention to the question she's asked. She's just going to bait Donald Trump. She's going to say he said neo-Nazis were good people in his Charlottesville speech. She's going to race bait him and all that. I just don't see any value to that whatsoever, and I'm hoping that he doesn't do it. You know, her policy issues have been so bad. If I'm Trump, I am focusing on three things and three things only. I'm focusing on immigration. She was supposed to be in charge of that. She's yet to go to the border, I believe. She went for an hour and a half to Guatemala, and that was it. Yeah. You know, was going to get to the root cause of it. She's never even come back and told us what the root cause is or anything about it. I'm on that. And then secondly, what I'm on is I'm on her inflation, the Harris-Biden inflation. And I don't say Biden-Harris anymore. I say Harris-Biden inflation. And because that's why groceries cost more. That's why real wages are down. That's why gasoline costs more. And the third thing I'm on is her stance related to Israel. Yeah. And her pro-Palestinian stance after they're the ones that killed Israeli civilians. They started it by killing Israeli civilians. Yeah. And those are the three things I would be on. I would never get off of anything else.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And at this point, because she has been the vice president and she is the presumptive nominee, you can lay the failures of the Biden administration at her feet. I think it's totally fair to lay the murder of Laken Riley and the other young women who have been murdered by illegal immigrants at Kamala Harris's feet. Oh, this woman who's supposed to be pro-woman. Well, what about the women who have been murdered by the illegal immigrants that came in on your watch, Kamala Harris? I think the same thing as you said, the unrest, the ridiculousness that we are seeing on the college campuses because of the pro-Palestine protesters. I want to hear what she thinks about that. She probably supports that. So I think it's totally fair.
Remember,
yeah, go ahead.
She supported all the Black Lives Matter. She's on record of supporting all the Black Lives Matter protests. She gave money to bail people out that were put in jail in Minnesota because of the violent protests. You know, she referred to, you know, the murders of George, and we talk about George Floyd, and it's really it's really a sad, sad scenario. And she's, in her legislative career, she was in the Senate for 4 years. She was either a sponsor or co-sponsor of 164 pieces of legislation. None of them passed. None of them.
Yeah.
So what has she done for America? Not one thing, but she has taken a lot from America.
Yeah, and just to specify what you were saying about in the wake of George Floyd's death and the BLM riots, she tweeted, if you're able to, chip in now to the Minnesota Freedom Fund to help post bail for those protesting on the ground in Minnesota. Well, one of the people who were bailed out, his name was George Howard. He was released because of the funds that were raised, because of the organization that Kamala Harris posted about. Well, of course, when he got out, he murdered someone. And, that's her record. She has a record of death and destruction against vulnerable people, whether it's in the position of law enforcement as the Attorney General of California, or it's in the position of senator, or in the position of vice president. She is pro-abortion, pro-murder, pro-chaos. That is who she is. Yep. That's what the Trump administration needs to go for. Yeah.
One of your many of your listeners will not remember this, but some of them that are closer to my mature age will remember that when President George H.W. Bush was running against Michael Dukakis back in 1987, 88, that Michael Dukakis who was a governor of Massachusetts, was either ahead or very close race. And the Bush campaign did an ad relating to the release of a convicted felon named Willie Horton. They were giving giving criminals weekend passes, and then he killed somebody in that. What Trump and them ought to do is the same thing with this Minnesota guy. That Willie Horton ad changed the entire race, and George H.W. Bush won by a landslide. She's got the same blood on her hands. Mm-hmm. She has got exactly the same blood on her hands. Now, did she hold the murder weapon? No. But she facilitated the person that should have been behind bars to be able to get out and do that. It's kind of like what you've said, all right? Every single one of these types of crimes, especially the ones made by people that should be in jail or shouldn't be in this country, are preventable.
Yep. Absolutely. And I don't know what you think about this, but I have seen a lot of people on the right, which I think we need to make sure that we're on the same page in the strategy against her. A lot of people pointing out that when she was Attorney General of California, she put a lot of black men behind bars for marijuana possession or something like that. And they're calling her, Kamala the cop. And I just don't think that is an effective strategy. I just don't know who the Republican Party would be winning for Donald Trump by pointing out that she was apparently, in some cases, tough on crime in California. I'm sorry, but you're just not going to get black Americans to listen to that and be like, oh, okay, I'm voting for Donald Trump. That's not going to happen. I think Trump administration, focus on getting evangelicals to vote for you, because right now there's a contingency of Christians who think that they're too pro-choice and they don't feel represented. You don't want those people to be apathetic. You don't want those people to feel like they're not represented. Or you, at the very least, if you're not going to change your rhetoric on abortion, at the very least, show us why no Christian in their right mind should either not vote third party, or vote for a Democrat because of how bloodthirsty Kamala Harris is. I don't care about her record on being too tough on crime in California. Don't threaten me with a good time. I don't care about that. I want to know why she is so radically progressive and why she would be dangerous for the country.
No, I agree with that. I think that you have to point out the things that are opposite of what we believe in. We want to be tough on crime. Now, we may have different positions on exactly what that means, but we want a law and order. We want law and order. And she has not been a law and order senator or vice president under any means. She's broken one of the most sacred laws of our time, and that is an open border. Mm-hmm. And again, you don't have countries if you don't have borders. She sure has a border around her place where she lives. So
right.
I think it's interesting.
Okay. Any predictions, Dad, to close this out? I mean, it's hard to know what to expect in the coming days, but as far as the election, as far as the Secret Service, we haven't even gotten into, the assassination attempt and things that have developed since then. What are your thoughts about what we may be seeing in the coming weeks?
I got a couple of thoughts I'd like to leave your audience with. First of all, millennials ought to be just totally thrilled because you have a millennial that is our vice presidential candidate. And you all talk about how much of the big voting bloc you are now, the largest voting bloc, the largest economic bloc. Well, you know what? Big boys and girls, step up. Let's prove it. Let's do something about it. You got somebody representing you, which I think is awesome.
Wow, he is
the
a
more
millennial.
I hear J.D. Vance talk, the better I am. The other thing that I would tell your audience, and this is a serious point, is we are living in very historic times. And I was thinking about this myself the other day. You should sit down when you have time and journal what's happened in the last 2 weeks, okay? Because at some point in time, you're going to want to really talk to your kids about that, okay? Because they're going to get taught a lesson in school and other places somewhere. You want to make sure that you've got all the facts written down that you can remember, we can remember now, so that we can educate them on what went on. Because this is truly historic time. And what we're seeing in real time, which we kind of live in, how does it affect me today? When you look back over things, it's kind of like living in the time when Lincoln was assassinated, or when we entered World War II. I mean, it's just something that has a impact and will be talked about for centuries to come in this country.
Yes, I saw someone say that the era that we're living in now is going to be the hardest section of some kids' AP history exam in like 2053. And it's so true. Keeping all the facts straight. My goodness. Okay, Dad, thank you so much.
And I still feel really good about President Trump winning.
Okay,
I feel good about that. I saw an interview with he and J.D. Vance last night, and again, he carried the same demeanor that he carried after his assassination. I hope he keeps that going.
Me too.
And just that's what you have to do. Because Kamala Harris, she will get the yelling, crazy hands going. I mean, she just does. And just let her do that. He needs to not be baited by her. He needs to bait her.
Yes, you know what? She's got very nervous energy, and people don't really like nervous energy. What would be bad for them? I know that we've already given them the advice, but I've just got like a little bit more. What would be bad is if in a debate, if he takes the debate, which I agree he shouldn't, is if he looks agitated and he looks upset and she looks calm and sassy, because she will be sassy. And for some people, that's going to be really off-putting. They're not going to like the sass. But for a lot of people, that they will like that because they hate Donald Trump. They want someone to put him in his place. And she cannot be calm and sassy and him be agitated. He needs to be calm and in charge. She needs to be nervous and silly. That's what needs to happen. So it'll be, interesting times, Dad. Interesting times. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Everyone needs to go get your book, Life Lessons from the Little Red Wagon. We'll put the link in the description. Everyone loves your wisdom, and they can read a whole book of it if they go get that book. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay. See you later, sweetie.
Bye.
Bye.